Okay, let's unpack this. Um, think back for a second. What were the words used in your family growing up to talk about female anatomy?
Mm.
For me, it was a whole lot of, well, tiptoeing around the subject,
Yeah.
vague terms that didn't really explain anything.
Yeah, that sounds familiar to many, I think.
And the word clitoris, it was
Yeah.
like a forbidden syllable.
Completely absent for a lot of people.
The funny thing is, it wasn't until later I learned that's the only human organ solely dedicated to pleasure.
That fact alone is quite startling when you first hear it.
Seriously, it makes you wonder why it was such a secret, doesn't it? Imagine if the male equivalent was just never mentioned.
That personal experience you're describing, that sense of unspoken rules around language, it's fascinating how that mirrors much larger historical and cultural trends.
Absolutely. And that's exactly where our deep dive is headed today. You shared some incredible source material focused on the Vagina Monologues.
Right, the play itself, yeah.
It's the full script, Gloria Steinem's insightful introduction, details about the V-Day movement, and even some really moving letters and notes from college productions.
A really rich set of sources.
Our mission today is to get to the heart of how our society talks, and maybe more importantly, doesn't talk about female anatomy, and to understand the impact of that silence. We're going to see how the Vagina Monologues and the V-Day movement have brought these issues into the light. Hopefully we can unlock some real understanding for you listening.
It does raise a fundamental question: why this reluctance, this absence of, well, straightforward language?
Exactly.
As the source material points out, even in families that were progressive in many ways, accurate and positive terms for female genitalia were often missing.
Right. It wasn't just ignorance, was it?
No, not necessarily.
The author even talks about her own grandmothers, one secretly writing sermons she didn't believe in and betting on horses, the other a suffragist and a pioneering female political candidate.
These were not women who shied away from difficult topics, clearly.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Yet this core aspect of female anatomy remained unspoken. It's such a stark contrast when you look at other cultures.
Yeah.
You highlighted the Hindu concepts of lingam and yoni.
Yes, those open, revered representations of male and female you see in temples and sacred spaces.
It's just so different.
And what's striking about that historical perspective is the suggestion that the yoni, the female symbol, was once considered the more potent symbol,
Right?
particularly in relation to creation, yeah. This idea is central to Tantrism, an ancient Indian spiritual tradition where the feminine principle is seen as key to achieving spiritual enlightenment.
Wow.
And even in some later monotheistic religions, despite their patriarchal structures, you can find echoes of this earlier valuation of female spiritual power. Though often relegated to the margins, may be seen as heresy.
Like what sort of thing?
Well, think of the Gnostic concept of Sophia as the female aspect of the divine, or the profound reverence for figures like Mary Magdalene.
Right, right. It's almost as if there was this ancient recognition of female power, deeply connected to life and creation, that underwent a process of, well, deliberate suppression or reinterpretation over time.
That seems to be the argument, yes. And that brings us to the feminist movement of the 1970s. You mentioned how that era saw a significant pushback against patriarchal control.
Exactly.
Not just in religious spheres, but across all aspects of society.
And reclaiming language was a big part of that, wasn't it?
Absolutely. Reclaiming language became a vital part of that movement. Consider Judy Chicago's Woman House, which intentionally incorporated female symbolism into the cultural landscape.
I remember reading about that.
Or Betty Dodson's very open and empowering advocacy for masturbation.
Right.
And then the deliberate act of taking back words like cunt. The key insight here is how the feminist movement recognized that controlling language is a way of controlling power.
And they sought to reverse that.
Precisely.
Which, as the text points out, isn't some inherently vulgar or offensive term. Its roots actually go way back, connected to the goddess Kali, and even to ancestral concepts of, like, kin and country.
It's like uncovering a lost layer of meaning, revealing a time when that word held respect and power.
Yeah. But alongside this effort to reclaim language, the text also powerfully highlights the deep anger that arose as the widespread reality of violence against women began to be acknowledged and spoken about.
And what's significant there is the idea that naming these previously hidden experiences, rape, abuse, female genital mutilation, bringing them into public discourse was a critical step.
Towards what? Healing.
Towards healing, yes, but also demanding accountability and ultimately fostering positive change. And it's within this context, this growing wave of truth-telling, that that the Vagina Monologues itself emerged.
Oh, okay.
Gloria Steinem describes it in her introduction as a natural and necessary progression of this whole journey.
And the way the play came about is so telling. Over 200 interviews with women. What really struck me was the initial hesitation to talk, which then seemed to completely dissolve once the women felt they had a safe space and were actually being asked to share their experiences.
That's right.
It speaks to this incredible, pent-up need to articulate these very personal parts of their lives.
What's fascinating is the sheer power of simply asking the question. It created a void that, well, desperately needed to be filled.
Yeah.
It allowed conversations that were often avoided or stigmatized to finally take place. And the play itself acts as a powerful lens, focusing our attention on the language we use or deliberately avoid when it comes to the vagina.
Exactly. The author points out how even the clinical term vagina, it can sound almost like a medical condition.
Or an instrument, yeah.
Right? Or an instrument used in a procedure.
Mm.
And then you have this whole spectrum of euphemisms: pussycat, pookie, twat, powder box.
Often quite infantilizing terms.
Yeah, cutesy terms that further distance us from the reality of the anatomy. And the play doesn't shy away from tackling some really specific and sometimes uncomfortable aspects. Take the hair monologue, for example.
Mm-hmm. What resonated with you most about that particular monologue?
Just the way it so clearly links societal expectations around female grooming, that almost unspoken pressure to shave with a woman's own sense of self-esteem.
And even relationships.
And even the dynamics within her intimate relationships. The anecdote about the husband who insisted she shave, and her own feelings of being puffy and exposed like a little girl.
It's quite visceral.
And then the dawning realization that pubic hair might actually serve a purpose, a form of protection. It seems like a minor detail, but it opens up this whole conversation about who gets to decide what a woman's body should look like.
And what makes her feel comfortable and authentic.
Exactly. The key insight here seems to be how deeply personal choices about our bodies are often shaped by external pressures and internalized expectations of femininity.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, it highlights how even seemingly private decisions about our bodies are often deeply intertwined with broader societal norms and, well, power dynamics.
Then you have the more imaginative and maybe whimsical monologues, like if your vagina got dressed or if your vagina could talk.
Those are quite memorable.
I found those really engaging because they tap into the diverse and often humorous ways women actually relate to this part of themselves. Imagining it in a beret, a leather jacket, or silk stockings.
Or the blunt pronouncements.
Or the blunt two-word pronouncements. Slow down, feed me, let's play. It's a way of giving agency and voice to something that's so often treated as this silent, passive entity.
What's interesting is that imaginative leap, the personification. It allows for a more intimate and less clinical connection. It's a way to move beyond the purely anatomical and explore the emotional landscape.
But then the play also delves into much heavier and more emotionally resonant territory. The Flood is such a powerful and honestly heartbreaking monologue.
It really is.
This vivid memory of a first sexual experience, the overwhelming physical reaction, followed by the crushing weight of shame.
Yeah.
And the lasting impact it had on this woman's life and her dreams.
That recurring dream.
Yeah, the recurring dream with Burt Reynolds in this opulent restaurant that always ends with this uncontrollable flood. It's such a potent metaphor for her unresolved trauma.
Absolutely.
And then the later physical loss of her reproductive organs and her almost detached way of describing it, closed due to flooding.
It really underscores how a single early experience can profoundly shape a person's entire relationship with their own body and sexuality.
It just highlights the long-lasting emotional and psychological consequences of those early experiences, particularly those involving shame or a lack of understanding around sex.
Mm-hmm.
And interspersed throughout the play are these vagina fact interludes, which are often both incredibly informative and, frankly, deeply unsettling.
Yes, those provide stark context.
The anecdote about the witch trial in 1593, where the lawyer examining the accused woman discovers the clitoris for the first time and misidentifies it as a devil's teat.
He's horrified.
It's a stark and terrifying reminder of the historical ignorance and profound fear surrounding female anatomy and the very real and deadly consequences of that ignorance.
Building on that historical perspective of ignorance and fear, these vagina fact interludes really underscore how a lack of understanding, coupled with existing societal biases, could lead to horrific accusations and outcomes.
Yeah, absolutely. The section on menstruation is also incredibly powerful. It's this compilation of so many different and often conflicting experiences, ranging from being slapped for staining clothes and being shrouded in secrecy and shame,
To the complete opposite.
to the completely contrasting experience of a friend whose family celebrated her first period.
The stark contrast between those experiences really illuminates the wildly varying societal attitudes and the heavy emotional baggage that can be attached to a perfectly natural bodily function.
The image of the girl, meticulously hiding, used pads in the attic, the mother's visible discomfort, the friend's mazel tov, followed by a painful slap. These are such vivid and often disturbing snapshots.
What's striking here is the general lack of consistent positive messaging around menstruation. Instead, there's often shame, fear, or a sense of it being something to, conceal.
And then you have the Vagina Workshop, which for me felt like a real turning point in the narrative.
Ah, yes, the journey of self-discovery.
This very personal journey
Huh.
of a woman actually using a mirror to look at her own vagina for the first time, the initial feeling of strangeness, followed by a sense of discovery, which she calls vaginal wonder,
Mm-hmm.
and then the exploration of orgasm, the frustration of accidental orgasms versus the conscious pursuit of pleasure, and the ultimate emotional breakthrough of finally locating and understanding her clitoris.
It's this powerful shift from treating it as an abstract concept to achieving a tangible and empowering sense of self-awareness.
What's powerful about this monologue is that emphasis on self-discovery and the demystification of female pleasure. It directly challenges the ingrained idea that women's sexuality is something passive or, well, accidental.
And then the vagina fact that immediately follows, emphatically stating that the clitoris is solely designed for pleasure.
A semi-automatic.
A veritable semi-automatic, yes, with a higher concentration of nerve endings than almost anywhere else in the body. It's almost a defiant and joyful assertion.
Exactly. It's a reclaiming of female pleasure as something central and essential, not a secondary consideration.
Definitely.
Because he liked to look at it is another monologue that speaks to this transformative power.
The power acceptance.
The woman who, through the genuine admiration of a partner, begins to see herself as beautiful and desirable. It's a powerful reminder of how positive affirmation, when it's authentic and heartfelt, can foster self-acceptance and even self-love.
Particularly in relation to parts of the body that might have been sources of insecurity.
Absolutely. This highlights the profound impact that a loving and accepting partner can have on a person's body image and self-esteem.
But the play doesn't shy away from confronting the most brutal realities. My vagina was my village.
Oh, that section is devastating.
It's a series of devastating monologues that depict the horrific trauma and violence inflicted on women's bodies in the most visceral and heartbreaking way.
The imagery, the dead animal sewn inside, the rifle, the bottles, the lingering smell of feces and smoked meat, it's brutal and unforgettable.
It forces you to confront the unimaginable violence that far too many women experience.
These monologues serve as a stark and necessary reminder of the profound violation and dehumanization that survivors of sexual violence endure.
And the stark contrast with the earlier positive associations of the vagina as a live, wet water village only underscores the immense damage caused by this violence.
And then the stark vagina fact, detailing the historical treatments for female masturbation clitoridectomy, the barbaric practice of sewing the labia together.
Directly contrasted with the complete absence of such procedures for boys.
It's unbelievable. And the staggering statistics on female genital mutilation, the sheer scale of it globally, and the devastating immediate and long-term consequences.
For the women and girls who endure it, yes.
The text rightly and unequivocally labels this as a violence against women. It's a historical and tragically ongoing reality of patriarchal control over women's bodies and their sexuality.
The blatant disparity in how male and female masturbation has been historically viewed and, quote, treated speaks volumes about societal power imbalances.
Definitely. Then there's my angry vagina.
Ah, yes. Such a cathartic release.
So cathartic and relatable. The litany of complaints about the discomfort of tampons, the invasiveness of douches, the indignity of those flimsy paper gowns and cold stirrups during gyno exams.
The constant irritation of thong underwear.
Yes, it's this collective outpouring of the feeling of the vagina being constantly poked, prodded, and medicalized without real consideration for comfort or well-being.
The underlying desire for comfort, for pleasure, and for basic respect for the vagina's natural state really comes through powerfully.
This monologue gives voice to the everyday irritations and indignities that many women experience in relation to their bodies and the healthcare system, often stemming from a lack of focus on their comfort and well-being.
Mm.
The little coochie snorcher that could... It's this incredible and ultimately hopeful journey
It really spans a lifetime, doesn't it?
from childhood fear and trauma, the fear of scratching, the physical abuse, the sexual abuse, to this eventual positive and affirming sexual experience with another woman.
Which leads to profound self-discovery and a reclaiming of her own sexuality.
It's a powerful testament to human resilience and the possibility of healing even after deep trauma.
What's powerful here is that transformation, the journey from a place of pain and fear to one of empowerment and self-acceptance through a positive and affirming experience.
And then the author's own personal journey with naming.
Moving from itsy bitsy.
Right, moving from a cutesy childhood term like itsy bitsy to the significant realization of the importance of accurate and respectful terminology with the word vulva.
It really highlights how the language we use profoundly shapes our understanding and our personal relationship with our own bodies.
The act of naming is incredibly significant, isn't it?
It's about taking ownership and moving away from infantilizing or inaccurate terms towards language that feels authentic, respectful, and ultimately empowering.
The vagina fact about the chief cutter in Guinea.
Mm-hmm.
That was fascinating.
Who never actually performed the physical cutting.
Yeah, but instead use psychological manipulation. It's such a nuanced and unexpected anecdote.
It really illustrates the complex interplay of tradition, power dynamics, and the potential for change even within seemingly rigid structures. It highlights that traditions are not always as fixed as they appear.
And that change can sometimes emerge in unexpected ways.
Exactly.
And finally, what does a vagina smell like? This collection of beautiful, poetic, and incredibly diverse answers.
Earth, wet garbage, God, snowflakes.
It so powerfully underscores the subjective and natural aspects, directly challenging the pervasive and often negative societal idea that there's one singular, usually unpleasant way a vagina is supposed to smell.
It's a celebration of the natural and diverse sense of the vagina, actively challenging societal taboos and promoting acceptance and a more, well, realistic understanding.
So all of this then organically led to the creation of the V-Day movement.
Right. It grew directly out of the play's impact.
It wasn't just about the powerful impact of the play itself. It was the overwhelming response to the stories of violence against women that propelled it into this global activist force.
It's described as a catalyst, a dynamic movement, rather than a traditional top-down organization.
Which is why it's been able to operate with such minimal overhead and direct a significant percentage of funds to grassroots efforts on the ground.
The structure of V-Day is indeed quite unique and seems highly effective. By intentionally remaining a movement rather than a traditional bureaucratic organization, it maximizes its ability to adapt, respond, and directly support local initiatives.
And the V-Day College Initiative, the letters and notes from the students who organize these productions on campuses.
Yeah.
Just wow.
They're genuinely inspiring, aren't they? You can feel their passion, their hard work, the challenges they encountered.
Their creative fundraising efforts, and those deeply moving stories of personal transformation among both the participants and the audience members.
The example of the student who mobilized 150 people and initiated 10 related activities.
Or the one who was initially nervous but overwhelmed by the positive and open response in a more conservative environment.
And the incredible story of the grandmother who, after seeing the play, declared she was finally going to have an open conversation with her friends about their cuts.
That's amazing.
These firsthand accounts powerfully demonstrate the play's remarkable ability to ignite conversations, build a sense of community, and empower individuals, especially young people.
The grandmother's reaction is a particularly vivid illustration of the play's capacity to dismantle deeply entrenched taboos across generations.
And the profound impact on survivors of sexual violence seems undeniable.
Seems crucial.
The play and the movement offer not just a platform for sharing their stories, but also a real vehicle for healing and a vital sense of community and solidarity.
And when you look at the sheer number and the incredible diversity of organizations around the world that have directly benefited from V-Day funds,
It's a powerful testament to its truly far-reaching impact and effectiveness.
it underscores the absolutely crucial role that art and activism can play in directly addressing and facilitating healing from the deep trauma of violence against women.
And finally, the author's own deliberate reclaiming of the word cunt.
Yes, let's touch on that.
exploring its phonetics, the personal associations she makes with it, and the refreshingly innocent and unburdened responses she gets from young girls when asked about their vaginas.
Like, it hasn't been weaponized for them yet.
Exactly. It's this powerful act of taking back a word that has so often been weaponized to shame and demean women and imbuing it with a sense of power, even tenderness.
A potent example of linguistic reclamation, directly challenging the negative and harmful connotations, and actively seeking to redefine the word on female terms, free from patriarchal baggage.
And then you have monologues like The Woman Who Loved to Make Vaginas Happy. This fascinating story of a former lawyer who discovered her true calling in helping women experience sexual pleasure,
Focusing on moaning.
emphasizing the often overlooked importance and power of a woman's moans. It's this wonderfully unapologetic embrace and celebration of female sexuality.
This monologue boldly celebrates female pleasure and directly challenges the pervasive societal discomfort surrounding women expressing their sexuality openly and audibly.
The inclusion of lesbian perspectives within the play is also incredibly important.
Why specifically?
Well, offering valuable insights into intimacy and a refreshing directness of language and action regarding vaginas that directly challenges many long-held heterosexual norms and assumptions.
Yeah.
By intentionally including these diverse lesbian perspectives, the play broadens and enriches the entire conversation around female sexuality and intimacy, moving beyond a solely heterosexual framework and acknowledging a wider range of experiences.
And then we have the incredibly powerful birth monologue.
Oh, yes. That's profound.
Witnessing that raw, awe-inspiring transformation of the vagina during childbirth, the sheer physical power and vulnerability of
The
it.
profound metaphorical connection drawn between the vagina and the heart.
Yes, embodying themes of sacrifice, forgiveness, resilience, and the very essence of life-giving. It's such a deeply moving and profound piece.
This monologue elevates the extraordinary act of childbirth and the absolutely vital role of the vagina in creation, powerfully highlighting its incredible strength, resilience, and life-affirming capabilities.
The deliberate comparison to the heart underscores its essential and often underestimated power.
So, as we sort of reach the end of this deep dive into the Vagina Monologues and the V-Day movement, what for you are the key overarching insights?
It feels like we've explored so many interconnected themes.
Hmm.
The immense power of language and the often damaging impact of silence.
Definitely.
The vast and often surprising diversity of experiences and perspectives surrounding female anatomy. The profound ways in which societal attitudes shape our individual relationships with our own bodies.
And the activism piece.
And the truly transformative potential of open and honest dialogue and collective activism,
Mm.
also powerfully embodied in this groundbreaking play and the global movement it ignited.
What truly stands out, I think, is the remarkable courage to break through deeply entrenched silence, to give voice to what has for so long been, well, unnameable. Both the play and the movement have created vital spaces for women to share their most personal stories, their joys, their pain, their triumphs, and in doing so, to challenge limiting societal norms and begin profound processes of both individual and collective healing and empowerment.
And it really makes you reflect on your own relationship with your body, with the language you use, or perhaps the language you've been conditioned to avoid. It all seems to come back to that initial sense of hushed secrecy, doesn't it?
Indeed. And perhaps the most thought-provoking takeaway here is this. What if we all embraced a greater openness and honesty in how we talk about our bodies?
In all their reality.
In all their messy, complex, and ultimately wonderful reality? Consider for a moment how even a subtle shift in that narrative, starting within our own lives and conversations, could ripple outwards,
How so?
potentially impacting everything from our personal well-being and self-acceptance to the very foundational structures of our society.